But yeah, no, I was just saying that I'm glad that Jacob, our mutual friend, Jacob Rosenberg, put two and two together and connected us, So that's
Yeah,
super cool.
Jacob's rad, man.
Yeah, he's
Such,
super
such
cool.
such an encourager.
He really is, man. He really
Mm.
is. And we're all California born and raised, Northern California. So
NorCal.
yeah, we got that going for us. So wait, I I'm so you grew up in San Jose, right? Were you born in San Jose as well?
No, no. So I was born in San Francisco in
Oh, okay.
'71. Born in San Francisco. We lived in Daly City until I was about 6, and then my parents bought a home in San Jose.
Ah,
And the home that we got in San Jose, that's where I live, or I should say, that's where we lived until we moved to Southern California, Tustin, to be exact. Um,
hmm.
and that was 87,
Oh, okay.
88. I'm sorry, 88.
Okay,
So,
so
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 San
you were like
Jose. So I was, what was
17,
I, 16? So
16, 17.
I'm October baby. So I graduated 17, but turned 18, right? During,
Hmm.
during the summer.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so junior, senior year was at Tustin High.
Okay.
And so I went to Independence High School. I don't know if you heard of
I
Independence.
do know Independence High School. I
That's where I
do.
went high school. High school was Independence. I was unfortunately just on the just on the other line of the border for Piedmont High School. All my friends
Mm,
went to Piedmont, all my skate buddies,
yeah.
and we all went to middle school together. It's called Sierramont. And I got separated from those dudes in high school. We played in a band together, but I couldn't be in the band anymore because it
Mm,
took Independence was farther away. I had to take the bus. We got out later. The band would always practice right after school. So, because
yeah.
we'd skate right after practice. So I'd be able to link up with them to skate, but not to play in the band anymore. But,
I see.
but anyways, yeah, I lived in, Daly City till 6, moved to San Jose. San Jose, we lived off of Hostetter Road, which is
Okay.
close to Milpitas.
Yeah.
Um, and closer to Berryessa. So it's kind of like, what is that, like East San Jose? Somewhere.
Yeah, that's East San Jose. Yeah, East San
Yeah.
Jose, borderlining Milpitas. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's where I'm originally from, around that area, but more like
Oh,
the
okay.
Evergreen area. So I actually
Okay.
went to this is I'm just thinking about the listener right now. I'm like, this is like
Listeners
so
like,
funny.
so?
Yeah, they're like, I don't know anything about San Jose. Well, anyways, I'm just gonna say this for context. But yeah, so I went to Mount Pleasant for my freshman year, and then I went to Valley Christian my sophomore through senior year, and those were two totally different experiences.
I can
But
only
I think
imagine.
oh, completely different experiences. And it's interesting because I also grew up skateboarding, and like skateboarding was my life from basically 12 years old till 18, 19.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and I was really, really, really into skateboarding.
Yeah.
Um, and actually, I had Jerry Hsu on the
Oh,
podcast
cool.
a few years. Well, oh gosh, quite a few years ago now. So I've been doing this podcast for 10 years, but I
Wow.
had him on the podcast maybe in 2019, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was talking to him about this time when I challenged him to skate. And I think that same week I learned switch frontside flips,
Cool.
and I was just trying to do those, and he like got me on every single letter, but I was just trying to do. I don't know. I was like, maybe I'll get him on this, but anyways, it's just
Uh,
you
yeah.
you you know that feeling, like learning a new trick, wanting to do it, and I don't know. It's interesting too to see someone that you like admire when I was at such a young age too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
yeah.
dude, it's funny, Jerry Hsu. So I first met Jerry Hsu. So I had a
Uh-huh.
buddy who was the team manager for Real Skateboards. His name's Dave Meddy. And Meddy got a gig being the skate camp director for the YMCA skate camp in the Sequoias.
Oh, okay.
And one year he reached out to myself, Samuel Aga, and Joe Gruber and was like, "Hey, you guys want to come be camp counselors at skate camp?" And we were all like, "Sure, sounds fun, whatever." And so
That's so
Jerry
cool, man.
Jerry Jerry
Yeah.
Sue was my camper.
No
So I met
way.
Jerry Sue because I was his camp counselor. And so he was in my cabin, and just the coolest kid, man. And the thing that I'll never forget, well, I mean, he's a ripper even back then, right? Like you could just see that potential, right? He
Yeah,
wasn't
I can
sponsored or
imagine.
anything yet or anything. But so they had like a little rec hall where they would show old skate videos. They just have like a DVD player or something. So throughout the day, because like they can't skate all day, so when they're taking breaks and getting their snacks or whatever and watching skate videos, I never forget him coming back from watching like questionable, I think plan B, questionable, and he was just
Brings it back to Jacob.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
And he had never seen it. Um,
Ah.
and he was tripping out on Rodney Mullen. He was like, "Ray, how come nobody skates like that?" Like they're like, "Whoa!" Like he just found out about Rodney, and I was just like, "Dude, that's so cool." And just from him having so much enthusiasm towards Rodney, like
Yeah.
I was already like, "This cat's different." And sure enough, like, dude, Jerry skating is so unique and so different. I mean, he was still showing signs of that there, but
Yeah.
you could just tell like that mind is seeing it. He's excited about something that a lot of these other dudes aren't really excited about.
Yeah. So that's an interesting point. Like, so I'm curious about kind of the origins of your creativity. So we're essentially talking about like Jerry Sue and how you kind of saw something of him at such a young age. But like when you think about just creativity in general, because you're so multifaceted with the creative expressions in which you express yourself in, like, did you see something unique within yourself at such a young age, or when you think about that time from before?
Just being a sponge.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, like just and a lot of this stuff's reflecting. In the moment, you're just reacting. You're just,
Mm-hmm.
what I mean. And so, it's funny because you hear that saying like apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right? And how many times have you heard stories of like either musicians or actors being like, oh, like, I grew up like think about like is it Rashida Jones, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
growing up Quincy Jones's daughter, you know what I mean? And so like as a kid, like think of like all of her dad's friends that were just like common faces that she would see, and it's just growing up in this environment, you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
I'm not surprised that like she became an actress or whatever, you know what I mean? And I guess what I'm saying is like in a weird way, like when I first saw my first skateboard, that changed everything for me because you know I got into skateboarding like you when I was 12. So for me that was like it was a summer between 6th and 7th grade. And
Yeah.
so my buddy, his dad used to skateboard in the 70s. He was like in the 70s park era, right? And so he gets his son a skateboard for his birthday. And I'd seen a skateboard before, but it was, we call them banana boards, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
is what most people would know as like your penny boards or whatever. And so I was just like, that was not exciting seeing those banana boards. That was in the bin at in my buddies' garages when we would just be like out in the garage and in the driveway doing whatever, and he'd have a bin of stuff, and it was like, oh, there's like a banana board, hula hoop, you know, one of those big like bouncy balls or whatever, right?
Hmm.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is like there was no interest towards that. But my buddy gets his dad gets him a skateboard for his birthday, and that skateboard was a skateboard. It was a Veriflex Vectra, had this like super colorful, had this dynamic graphic on it, 10 inches wide, 30 inches long. And I could just tell that, like, wow, like that's a part of something. I don't even know what, but I want to know.
That's
You know what
cool.
I mean? You know what I mean? And
I
so,
totally know what you mean. Yeah.
yeah. And we always rode bikes around until he got a skateboard. And then when he got a skateboard, he's riding his board and I'm riding my bike. And I was just like, he's having way more fun than me. Like, I want to get a skateboard. Like, and
Yeah.
that skateboard was pretty much like gave me like it was a window into a whole new world. It was like, and I
Mm.
guess what I'm trying to say is like then being engulfed and embraced and how do you want to say it, like experiencing this world. Apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Like, what does this world comprise of? What does this culture comprise of? Like all of this stuff. you know
Yeah. No,
videography, cinematography, whatever you're calling it,
mm.
photography, music, art, graphics. It's just like that's what you're around. Much like the kid that grows up with their parents' vocation and that they end up doing it. It's like you kind of don't have a choice, right? And so if you have a personality like mine that's like gets excited about things and is very curious and interested and want to explore stuff, that's like a candy store for that personality, the skateboarding culture.
Definitely, definitely. And so so I have two things to say. One is a throwback that I think you particularly would appreciate and people that lived in the Bay Area. So speaking of first skateboards, my first skateboard I bought at Go Skate. Do you remember that place?
Yeah, yeah, for course, because they had them. It was a franchise, so there was one in San Jose. There's one in
Yeah.
Sacramento.
Yeah.
I didn't know there was one in San Francisco, to be honest with you.
I
But
didn't know that either, actually.
mhm. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, Go Skate, like biggest influence on my skateboarding, in particular, was my friend Randy Smith. He worked at Go Skates in Sacramento, but in general, the whole scene in Sacto, the street skating scene in Sacramento, and they were all like, we always met up at Go Skate there in Quimby.
Mm.
And so, yeah, so for me, like, there's a deep affection towards Go Skate in general.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, no, I was just yeah, I don't know. I was just thinking about that as like kind of this
Yeah.
San Jose.
There was Grimmix in San Jose. It was Grimmix, but my first like actual sponsor, legit sponsor, was Sessions, Joel Gomez. It's called
Oh,
Sessions in
okay.
Sunnyvale skate shop called
Okay.
Sessions. And then Joel went on to do like Sessions clothing, like in snowboards.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then there was a
Wow.
company called Esty that he started, and that was with Salman Aga and like I forget who else. Oh, Tim Brosh. I don't know if you remember
Uh-huh.
Tim Brosh.
I
Tim
do.
Brosh is
Yeah.
San Jose. Tim Brosh and Jason Adams, like those
Tim
dudes.
Brosh used to skate for Santa Cruz
Yeah,
back in the day from
yeah,
from the era that I remember
yeah,
his
and
skateboarding.
yeah, and he was a part of SD, which was the clothing brand that Joel started. But anyway, Sessions is probably my favorite skate shop.
Yeah. And so I'm curious what you think about this perspective in terms of the lineage or the alignment rather of creativity and skateboarding, because I feel like for me, and I'll speak of my experiences of how
Mhm.
skateboarding affected my creativity, is that with skateboarding you can see the world and the streets as a whole different place, assuming that you're a street skateboarder, right?
Mhm.
So you
Mhm.
might see a set of stairs, or you might see a ledge or a curb, or
Mhm.
or a handrail or something, and you can think about it in a way where you're expressing yourself through your body and with a skateboard, right?
Mhm.
But the world, for lack of a better term, starts to become a canvas, right?
Mhm.
And I'm
Mhm.
curious how skateboarding in general, since you started at such a young age, affected all of the other creative arts that you do. And the main ones, just so I'm correct, that you focus on are being a musician, playing guitar, right? And
Mhm.
photography,
Mhm.
aside from skateboarding, obviously.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I mean, like I was saying, when I first got into skateboarding, like I got introduced to a whole new world, right? And so part of that new world is, yeah, like how you're perceiving things now. You're just seeing things different now. You
Mm.
know, you're
Yeah.
seeing things through the lens of this skateboard. And so, um, when I first started skating, it was skating ramps, but you still were needing to skate to get to the ramps. You still were wanting to skateboard after you had to stop skating the ramps because the neighbors were like, "You guys got to cut that at 6 o'clock or whatever." So, um, you're always, for us, we're 24/7 on these skateboards. You know what I mean? And so it just made you always be having to, um, how do you want to say, deal with like like where do you want to skate? What are we riding? We're riding curbs. What are we doing? And then, like, I guess, like, you're always in the act of doing it, but the act of doing it is always having to use your mind of like, what do I want to do?
Yeah.
like you're always, in a weird way, you're always calculating and problem solving real time, if that makes sense. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because
Mhm.
you're like, and you're always kind of imagining. You're like, like, I think we can get up on that thing. Let's try it. I think so. Like, you're always like mentally, because of playing music. I'm speaking in terms of like music language, but you're always riffing.
Yeah, of
You
course.
know what I mean? You're always riffing ideas, like, because that's the fun. It's just like
Yeah.
your imagination and the idea of like the potential of like what you can figure out in a challenge. Like, can you? I like, dude. I think we can ollie cross that. Whatever. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? And so it's just kind of like inherent within the doing it. It calls for the cognitive to always be quick or whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Quick
you're
with
because you're like you're it's just a lot going on, and you're always reacting because you're always moving. You're always moving. You're never still.
totally.
I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, you know, uh, you might be standing there waiting for your buddy to do his trick so you can get a chance to. But what I'm saying is like, there's never a um, like if you're in the act of doing it, there's always something firing and thinking or do. I don't know. You know what I mean? And so,
I totally know what you mean. Yeah. And do you think that by the act of the constantly doing, have you thought about this much?
to be honest with you, what's so funny is like I
Uh,
only think about this stuff when we're talking about it. I don't ever. You're just doing it.
yeah, exactly. You're not
You know
like
what I mean?
overly analyzing. Hmm.
No, this calls for analyzing. This always does. but
Totally.
which is
Yeah.
cool because I think it's interesting, and I think it's informative and stuff. But the way it works, a lot of times you're just responding and moving, and then you're talking about it after.
Exactly. Yeah, of course. And I think that's what the beauty is of, well, the creative arts, or like rather the expression, like using something to express yourself, right? I think
Yeah,
there's something beautiful about that. And I think my question to you is, do you think that skateboarding, because it's so much about doing and failing and doing and failing and eventually succeeding, right? Maybe after you try something hundreds of times, do you think that ingrained a certain amount of fearlessness in you with the way that you approach other things in life?
for sure. I mean, yes, definitely. And that's what's inherent within the act of doing it is that you become very acquainted with failure. Like it becomes normal. It becomes like expected. It becomes something that it's a part of it. So it allows you to not be discouraged or hindered by it because
Yeah.
just to get over the learning curve, and if the fire is deep enough or the passion because of the fun, then you just realize like this is what it looks like. This is part of the process. So that's the thing, to your question earlier, that's the thing that gets developed like a muscle, that you take into anything you do,
Totally.
um, because it becomes inherent and ingrained. You don't know any different. Just like you were saying earlier, like that becomes a part of the way you perceive things and all of it. You know what I mean? Like I'll be 90 years old and still be like, dang, somebody, whatever, like somebody could skate that right there.
Yeah.
Like that would be cool. Like you're always gonna see it different. Like you can't. Like I always think about it. It's like if you're aware of something, you can never become unaware. So like if you're aware of like the possibilities, and if you're so like used to seeing something, like skateboarding made me look at everything, and I think that's what I'm saying. It made me aware of the potential possibilities that I just can't be unaware now,
Yeah.
whether I'm skating or not. Like I just can't not see it. It's like you remember those what was that, like the 90s? You remember there was that whole craze of like they figured out a way to like come up with it was like it was a print, right? It'd be a print, like
Hmm.
a poster or a print, and they figured out how to, within the patterns, you look at it long enough, you'll see like a kind of like a 3D image
I know what you're talking about. You mean like
pop
those
out.
those 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 books that you just stare at the image for long
Yeah,
enough and it has all these patterns?
but at the mall they had big prints. So
Uh-huh.
we'd be at the mall being like, "Oh, what's in this one?" And you sit there, and then you'd be like, "Oh, I see it," and the person next to you would be like, "I don't see it yet," and you're like, "It's there." And then and
Yeah.
then like, but once I saw it, like I can't not see it. I'm like, "Yeah, there it is," and it's that kind of thing where it's just like I see it now, so I can't unsee it, and I guess in a mental way, skateboarding kind of does that too. It's like I'm gonna go for that thing because like I'm not afraid of like sucking at it or whatever. Like I'll just make a decision of like, okay, I'm done trying now.
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna like not try it because of fear of I might fail or whatever.
No, it's interesting because I was listening to you speak on another podcast and you were talking about when you first started guitar. Well, first of all, I found that it was really interesting that when you started guitar, you didn't have your own guitar. You were just borrowing someone else's. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly. MTV baby. So MTV comes out, right? I'm in fifth grade, that introduces rock and roll in the house, because my dad was a sax player. I mean, he played sax. I mean, he was a mechanic, but he loved to play saxophone.
That's
And
cool.
so grew up with a lot of soul and jazz in the house. And but MTV comes out, and now I've got like rock and metal and all kinds of stuff in the house now. And so, and MTV had this kind of, very ambitious goal of having 24/7 content, music, and so like, but they didn't have that many videos, right? Like, people weren't really making music videos yet. So they had a lot of like marketing videos that the record labels would make for the bands, which would be like typically concert footage. So I saw a lot of concerts, and they were all like typically like metal bands. So it'd be like AC/DC, Van Halen, Scorpions, Quiet Riot, Ozzy, Sabbath, and you know what I mean? And so I'm looking at like the dynamic on the bandstand, and I'm like, wow, the singer, like you could tell like he's the leader, he's the main dude. But then there's a time in the song where it's like, but then this other dude steps up and he becomes the main dude for a little bit, doing a big guitar solo, whatever. And I was like, that dude's cool. And I was like, dude, I want to play guitar. Like, I want to play electric guitar. But I didn't know anybody who had electric guitar. I'm in 5th grade. No, I had one friend that had electric guitar, but um, but that was it. And it was like, that was like out of my world. That was like something on TV. Like, that wasn't in my world. So it's just like, what? And I always say it. It's just like, skateboarding's always done that in my life, made things that seem so far away be nearer. And so for
Yeah.
me, once I got into skateboarding, then the dudes that I started skateboarding with, they played in punk bands. And what are they using?
Mhm.
Electric guitars and stuff. So now it's all about accessibility at the end of the day.
Mhm.
And so, um, so yeah, like, my parents weren't gonna buy me a guitar,
Yeah.
it's pretty expensive.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, especially
Or a
for like
fifth grader
yeah, for a fifth grader, I could imagine. But I guess,
who's, yeah. Mhm.
oh no, sorry. Well, I guess also what I was trying to get at with that too is that so when I was listening to you on this podcast, you were talking about not only did you not own the guitar, but somewhere in this picture, a crate amp came up where it was like a small crate amp, and the part that I thought was hilarious is that you recounted about like the first time you played a show or something like that, and you were
Yeah,
using like
yeah,
a larger, like a stack, maybe a larger amp, right?
yeah,
And you you could finally hear yourself, and you were playing everything wrong.
yeah.
And I love the kind of naivety in that, because I think, and I don't know if I'm curious what your thoughts are on this, but I don't know if because we have access to these little devices now where we're constantly comparing ourselves to other people and social media is such a rampant thing and blah blah blah, technology and everything,
Yeah, yeah.
where like I feel like before that sort of you could carry that naivety for a lot longer. Like I'm curious what you see maybe in like your kids or their friends or something and how they interact with things. But I feel like nowadays people are so much more, speaking of the awareness and essentially the shift in consciousness, right? The awareness of things is so much different that I don't know if it allows for that sort of like to carry on that childlike naive spirit, which I believe is really required for the creative pursuits, right? You have to fail. I mean, you have to, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I feel like more and more, like I used to think like recently, like when I say recently, last like 10 years, I used to think that like, well, let me back up. So, you know, skateboarding, like one of my longest sponsors, like when I turned pro in '89, and my first sponsor, my I shouldn't, I don't even know why I said first sponsor, but I first got on Vans shoes in '89 when I first turned pro. And so I've been riding for Vans since '89. And so over the
Holy
years,
crap!
and
You've been riding for Vans since '89,
yeah,
and you're still
yeah,
riding for Vans.
yeah, yeah.
That is
So grateful, man.
wild. Okay,
Yeah.
continue. Sorry, I just
Okay.
wow, that's wild.
Yeah. And so I want to say like about 10 years ago, maybe even a little more because time is flying. Um, I had this experience where so Vans started like opening up. So it's probably more than 10 years ago, actually. But Vans started opening up more like retail stores, right? And they would ask me to come play the grand openings, right? And so me and my buddies, we'd come play, and then for the pros, they'd have us do signings, right? We'd sign autographs while we're there. And so being at those events, I remember just kind of shooting the breeze and just talking with a lot of the kids hanging out, right? They were probably like 17, 18. And I'd always ask them like, so, so what do what are you into? And I can't tell you how many times I would hear like, I don't know. And I'd just be like, you don't know, and you're like 18, you don't know what you're into. Like, I would always trip out on that. And then for the longest, I would just think like, man, and maybe there is a certain dynamic or a little aspect of it, but I guess what I'm saying is I've changed my thinking towards it. But I would think back then, I would think like, man, maybe they just have so many options that they're just kind of like, I don't know. I do a little bit of this, I do a little bit of that. I don't know what I'm into. You know what I mean? I kind of like, kind of attributed to that. Like, man, maybe they can just do so much stuff that they're not doing anything. I don't know. But then,
Yeah,
but then, but then over the years, I'm like, you know what? I think it's a makeup thing. I think it's a personality thing because the personality that's always curious and just uses that curiosity for like a roadmap towards a curiosity turning into an interest that turns into a desire, like that whole process right there. I think that could be developed, but I think it just kind of functions in certain people, certain
yeah,
makeup and personalities that are just like, you know what I'm saying? Almost in a weird way, almost like when we talk about preferences, like you
mm.
can get like 20 people to walk inside of candy store and it's interesting what they walk out with, but you could get some that will walk out with nothing because they're just like, I don't like sweets.
Mm.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean? And so for me, it's kind of, and I think that's all right, but I've noticed that I think it's more internal than external in the sense of like person whose makeup and personality is just, again, like I was saying, like they're just always interested because that's me. And I have a lot of friends. So many of my friends in skateboarding, like it's probably you too. It's like,
yeah,
dude, like your curiosity is what helps you sniff out things. I want to know, like it makes you follow something, right? It's like, and
totally.
so, but if you're not curious and you're just kind of what, you know what I mean? Then that's cool. But I think that leads to a similar kind of result of just like, I don't know. But my point is like the person that's curious and they follow that curiosity and that curiosity turns into a passion and like that person's hype because they're the person that loves sweets and they're in the candy store and they're just like, give me this, give me that, give me that. Like what I'm saying is like the amount of doesn't matter how, you know what I'm saying? Like
Mm-hmm.
the what matters is that inherent sense of wonder towards anything. And
I
I don't
agree.
know if I don't know if I think that could be learned, but I think a lot of people just function with it innately because they are born with it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, no, I get you. I mean, you're definitely preaching to the choir on that. I mean, I
yeah.
definitely, me personally, I felt that certain sense of curiosity throughout my life for various things, whether it's, I mean, I kind of think of everything as a creative pursuit, you know, in terms
Mm,
of even like, because I heavily work out and I
mm-hmm.
have been doing jujitsu for like over 10 years, although I've stopped and started and been boxing for a long time. I've been boxing almost 9 years now.
Wow.
And yeah, so I mean, but also I think a lot of that stems from the beginning stages of skateboarding, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
because in the martial arts and fighting, especially when it's like full contact, which Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and boxing are full contact sports, you know, you will fail. There's going to be people that are going to be better than you, and it'll probably break you, but you got to pick yourself up in some regard, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that there's, I think it's a mixture of curiosity, right? But then also having a resilience to you, you know? And I guess that depends on how sensitive someone is too, you know, because maybe what seems resilient to one person is just kind of a way of being to another person. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
it's not even a question of
Mm-hmm.
thinking about it in a sense of resilience. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, you know, it's funny because, you know, uh, I've thought at times of like, like, you know, I attribute a lot to skateboarding, right? Just of like what it like built in me, if you will. You know what I mean? Like to your point, like resiliency and just however you want to say it, like fortitude or just like perseverance, all that stuff, right? But I'll think like, you know what? Like I think these things are like more like gyms, if you will. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know. I put my faith in Jesus, so I believe that He created us all in. I believe that like innately within our makeup is like this ability to pursue things, right? And to like we want to do these things. And so I guess what I'm saying is like we all start off with muscles, but the way we build those muscles, you can go about them so many different ways. You know what I mean? It's like you can be in a gym or you can like just use, look at Rocky. Like Rocky didn't have a good facility, but Rocky 3 he didn't have a good facility, but but he was out there like farming. He had that farmer strength. That's how he trained. Or I guess I guess what I'm trying to say is like
Uh-huh.
we we going back to our characters and personalities and temperament. That's what I'm saying. Like I believe God's given every human being their particular makeup, character, personalities, that stuff. And what I'm saying is like the personality and the makeup that's just like curious about a lot of stuff and it's just like I gotta go for it, I'm not gonna be afraid by failing or whatever. Like we all like the person that has that makeup, it's just what gym did they work out in to build that? Like for me, my gym was skateboarding, so therefore it has a certain thing. But there's people that are doing that, like with what you're saying, they do that in like boxing, or they do that in like whatever they're doing. It's just what did it grow in? Like again, if a makeup and temperament and personality is likened to a muscle, like where did you know where did that muscle build its strength?
I totally
And
get.
you know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? And so for me, it's like I'm biased because the gym that I live in to this day is skateboarding. So inherently, that's kind of built my muscle, if you will,
Mhm.
towards my um, I don't know how you want to say it, the way my mind thinks about approaching things, or
Mhm.
even the ability to persevere through adversity in the said thing or whatever. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
that stuff got worked out in skateboarding. Could have got worked out in somewhere else totally, because there's a million gyms.
definitely. Yeah, and I think that makeup, whatever you may have been born with, I think that probably the simplest way that I like to think about it is using what you have, being grateful for what you have, right? And being able to acquire skills along the way, and knowing that those skills can be transported into other things, right? You can utilize those skills and those things that you learn into other areas of your life. Sorry, were you going to say something?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, no. What you just said just brought up a couple thoughts for me. Well, the thankfulness, yeah, that's tied to humility, right? Like, and that's its own thing. Um, but I don't know. Also, uh, uh, another thing too is, again, going back to like, again, with people's makeups, like my makeup and personality, it's just there's an it wasn't until getting older and being responsible and having to justify stuff did I have to think things out. Like I got in the darkroom late, like 2008. You know what I mean? So I already had two kids. Like learning to print in the darkroom is expensive. You know what I mean? So, but I wanted to do it. So I had to figure out a way to justify the money spent and the time spent to learn that craft. And for me, so I guess what I'm trying to say is like when I was younger, and that's when all this stuff got developed, I didn't have to justify anything. So for me, there was no forethought of like, I'm going to listen to this dude because down the line, I'm going to use this. I'm just like a sponge. Like, that trick is rad, or that's cool. Like, I want to do, it's just full, like, running on the fumes of inspiration or something. You know what I mean? But
Yeah,
there wasn't a lot of thought of like, I'm gonna pay attention because I'm gonna get this out of it. I'm just like,
yeah,
I'm gonna pay attention. Well, I wasn't really concerned with the outcomes. I just wanted to learn. Does that make sense? Like I just
yeah,
wanted to learn and experience, but I wasn't really thinking about because that's gonna get me here or do this. Like for me, and again, we all have our own, everybody's different, right? I can only speak on my own. But for me, like my whole career, like I feel like it's God's grace, but in me, it was like stumbled upon because it was just like, I just want to be doing it. Like me and my buddies like wanted to be a part of street skating. It was mostly vert. The magazines were all vert. Like the industry concentrated on vert, but there was this small little kind of underground thing brewing and growing that hadn't really bubbled up to the top yet. But you've got Stacy Peralta and you've got Fausto Viatola and maybe Brad Dorfman, where they're seeing that like to sell skateboards, it has to be more participation. For more participation, like there has to be more accessibility. Not everybody knows the guy that knows the guy that has the backyard ramp. So I think there's something to this street skating. We're sponsoring these kids that are going and being a part of these little street contest things. We're
Yeah.
starting to do little street contests, but we're going to call it street style. And you've got guys like Mark Gonzalez and Tommy Guerrero and Nadas Kapis and others that are like, whoa, they're street guys. They're street specialists. You know
Is
what I
that where the
mean?
firm came in?
No, the firm was like
Or
after
was
Rocco
wait?
came in way
Oh,
later.
okay.
Yeah. So
Oh,
this
okay.
is like what I'm talking about is like
I think I got mixed up in the time
80,
periods.
85, 84-ish, 80,
Oh,
like
okay.
when I got
Okay.
into skateboarding. Um, and so I guess what I'm trying to say is that like, again, uh, getting into street skateboarding, like I, we just wanted to be around it because it was all vert is what that was being highlighted. And so,
Hmm.
um, going to these street contests and things like that was like, just wanted to be around it. This is exciting. Like I broke my wrist, so I couldn't skate the vert ramp anymore because I broke my wrist trying to body jar on this ramp called the Mush Ramp, which I think was like Menlo Park
Hmm.
area, somewhere
Okay.
over there. But anyways, my parents wouldn't let me skate with the cast. Um,
Yeah.
but my buddy had a backup board,
Uh huh.
and but we couldn't skate the ramp. I wasn't gonna skate the ramp with the cast, so we were in the streets more. And then that's when it like started to happen for me. I was like, this is more fun. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And so, um, and so I was just kind of on this thing of wanting to experience that, but it wasn't this like even after going to contests and placing top three most of the time when it got to that point, I like maybe the more I think about it, like like maybe it was like maybe these like little young street guys can't get models and turn pro or whatever. But for me, it was like I never thought I just wanted to be doing it. I didn't think it would lead to an opportunity to turn pro. Even after getting
Yeah.
sponsored by Pal Peralta, I just thought like in a weird way, I was just like I always dreamed and imagined like, man, it'd be so fun to have my name on a skateboard. But that to me is no different than when you get asked when you're a kid, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you're like a fireman or a doctor, whatever.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't. I don't know how many kids are and I'm gonna like pursue and make it happen. They're just kind of saying like that would be cool.
Yeah.
And for me, that's what it was
Yeah.
with the towards turning pro. It was like being in class, drawing a Tony Hawk graphics, but putting my name, just being like, that would be so cool, but never thinking it could be a reality. Even getting sponsored by Powell Peralta and being an amateur and skating contests and stuff, I still wasn't thinking. It was weird. I still wasn't thinking like I would turn pro or anything. So for
Yeah.
me, in a weird way, it's kind of like I stumbled on it. Like I'm just very grateful, but it wasn't this like thought out, strategic. But I have friends where their personality is like Jamie Thomas. I'm moving from Alabama. I'm gonna go kill it and turn pro, and this is gonna be, and it's like that's awesome. Like they were just so focused and they had their like goals and boom, boom, boom. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But my experience is just different, But I think a lot of that's different because of again like my particular makeup and personality.
I get that. Yeah. So, okay. So I have a couple thoughts on that. But speaking of just in general being a sponge, how, and this is kind of neither here nor there kind of a thing because okay, I'm just gonna ask. So if you if you didn't leave San Jose, like your parents didn't have the decision to move you down to Southern California, like how do you think by being in proximity to all the skateboarders that you were in Southern California, how much you think your skateboarding would have changed, if you had stayed in San Jose, for instance.
I don't think my skateboarding would have changed. Opportunities might have been different. Um, but location was crucial in, uh, you know, how I was able to, uh, yeah, become a part of the industry or become a part of the becoming pro. You know what I mean? I think, um, basically Southern California, that was the heart of the scene, you know what I mean? And so I'm in the backyard now. But before we would just take trips to come out and stuff like that, you know what I mean? And so it's hard to say because NorCal had its scene too, you know what I mean? Like maybe in a weird way I would have rode for Santa Cruz even though I didn't want to or something, but I don't know. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
um it's but I think riding for Powell Peralta, which was the best skate company at the time, one of the biggest. I mean, obviously I'm
Yeah.
biased if I'm saying the best. Not
Yeah.
everybody's going to agree with that, but
Yeah.
I can say it was one of the biggest with one of
Hmm.
the biggest distributions. You know what
Hmm.
I mean? And so
Yeah.
that platform was huge for me to be introduced to the skateboard world from. You know what I mean?
I get you. Yeah. I guess what
And
I,
I don't know if that, and that might have happened in NorCal, but it might not have. It's hard to know. Like Tommy Guerrero was in NorCal, and Tommy was always so encouraging towards me because I knew Tommy when I was just like a little dude, and he was just always like, I remember him saying like, "Hey, just let me know. I'll get you on Powell Peralta." You know what I mean? So who knows if I would have took him up at some point and then be a part of it, come in through San Jose rather than SoCal. But I guess what I'm trying to say is like Powell Peralta was the vehicle, and Powell Peralta wasn't limited to any specific geographic location.
yeah,
You know what I
yeah,
mean? And so
totally.
it's so, but but the way it went down, I'm skating with a lot of the Powell dudes, and there was more people like talking to Stacy about me because we're actually skating together, and maybe those guys I wouldn't have skated with in in NorCal if you know what I mean. And so
No, that makes sense. I guess what I'm trying to ask too is also like being the sponge. And there's that famous quote, "I see further because I stand on the shoulders of giants." I believe
yeah,
that's like Eleanor Roosevelt. But
huh?
um, like basically, with any sort of thing where you develop skills like boxing or, obviously the people that you train with are going to have an influence on you. And if you train with better people, then they're definitely going to have an influence on you. So right. So I guess that's what I'm trying to get at too
Mm.
is like, how much do you think your skills developed also from just being with other people that are incredibly skilled as well?
Well, skateboarding is amazing, right? Because it's like even back then, it's just like, especially in California, it's like, dude, yeah. I mean, there's a lot more skaters in SoCal, but there's rippers in NorCal too. So, like
That's true.
again, like I'm birthed from Sacramento, so that's my training ground. I come from that, and what I learned from that is, see, like because I'm on the platform, because I came out on the platform of Pau Peralta, it makes it like I'm singled out, but I represent Sacramento really, and all those dudes, we're all doing those tricks. Like we might have stumbled across different things, but what got introduced was the way we skated, but I represented that. So I get the credit for it because I came out in Pau Peralta and those
Mm,
dudes did, you know what I'm saying? And so for me, like what I brought and what even gave me the opportunities was what I learned from my crew in Sacramento.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I brought something different to, or you know what I mean? I represented that in SoCal, and that I think is what allowed me to get my opportunities and to stand out in some kind of, if you can say it stood out, you know what I mean? And so, you
Yeah.
know, so to your point, like, um, I could have just stayed in Sac, you know what I mean, stayed in NorCal and still keep developing from that. I don't know, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but you do travel and skate with people, and like, um, uh, so you could be on the road and get pushed by just at demos and stuff. That's, you know, a contest, like that stuff's kind of inherent too. Like you rise to the occasion because you're in a setting to where it's like you got to step it up now. You know what I mean?
Totally.
But
Totally.
I grew
Yeah.
up skating with dudes that like always pushed me, because I'm always constantly learning. Like, you know what I mean? And so, yeah.
No. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Definitely. And so, I'm curious. So, with the photography, so I believe I heard you talk about this on another podcast where, because obviously as a skateboarder, you're getting photographed by people, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there was a photographer and they were shooting with a Yashica T4, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I believe you were in New York.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
took
Yeah.
you to B&H because you're
Mm-hmm.
like, whoa, what is that camera? I want that camera or whatever, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
that photographer brought you to B&H, and then you bought that camera, right? And that's kind
Yeah.
of the beginning of your photography journey. Is that
Yeah.
right? Which
Yeah.
photographer was that, if you remember? And
Yeah, for
what
sure. I
year was
remember.
that?
So it was 95, and it was my buddy Joe Brook. And yeah, we were on this tour, um, and we were gone for probably about 2 months. And it was kind of one of your kind of more grueling, kind of rawer tours, which means very little budget. So it was a lot of couch surfing and crashing out and like rest stops and things like that. Um,
Yeah.
but like 2 weeks in, like I'm seeing Joe, like, because uh, I always notice with my photographer friends, especially on these trips, right? Um, Skate trips where they're working for the magazine. So, they'd have their main camera, which was for the action stuff, right? Like their wide angles and their motor drives and their long lenses and stuff and their lights and everything. But then when the day was done, we go back to the hotels and then we all meet up down in the lobby for dinner or whatever we were going to do that night. They'd always have a smaller camera, you know, and always shooting just, I guess, what they call kind of just like candid moments, you know what I mean? Like the lifestyle kind of stuff, that the B kind of stuff that they would use in the articles that would come out in the mags, And I remember just thinking like, man, like we're doing so much stuff. We're having so much fun. And like I'm not I'm not documenting any of it. I'm not having a record of any of this stuff to like go back and show my friends or even anything. And so, you know, I didn't have an interest to like do the stuff that was like get a camera to shoot action. I didn't want to shoot skating. I'm skating. I want to skate. But all this other stuff, the goofy stuff we're doing and all the like trippy stuff that we're experiencing and like situations we're finding ourselves in and stuff, I'm like, dude, I want to shoot that. And so, and yeah, he had the Yashica T4, which like just came out, and a lot of the skate photographers always had one of those in their bag because it turned out that that lens was really special. It was a Carl Zeiss lens. And those weren't really common on like low end point and shoots. And so, yeah, I told Joe, I was like, Joe, I want to get a camera. And he's like, and I was like, I want to get that one right there. How much was that? And he's like, told me. I was like, I can afford that. And so he was like, look, we're going to be in New York in a couple of days. I'll take you to B&H and we'll get you a camera. And then sure enough, and then we got to New York, went to B&H, got the camera. And then like I shot with that thing like nonstop for about 5 years. Just all my trips, everything. And we get home, take the film to Walgreens, get my print an hour later, be with my friends, and they're just like, dude, how was Spain? How was whatever, wherever I just got back from? And I'm like, yeah, I just got the photos, check them out. I'd get doubles, and that experience was just so fun. But but I knew in the back of my head that like I'm not doing what they're doing.
Mhm.
like like the camera's like, man, I mean it's automatic, so like, and I would get my prints back, and I noticed certain photos. I'm like, dang, that one looked so much better in my head.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
then
yeah.
and then I would start asking like Joe or my other buddies, photographers, and they'd be like, yeah, you need a manual camera to do what you're talking about. And I was like, and that like made me like always know that like there's a difference. Like they're really
Mm.
doing it. I'm just kind of point and shoot, whatever. But what they're doing is a craft. You know what I mean? And so like I always, and so that was something that I always was like, oh, one day I want to learn that. I want to learn to use a manual camera, because I would get so bummed out on the way certain photos would come back, and I just kind of knew like, yeah, this is training wheels. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like I'm not balancing on my own. Like I'm on one wheel or the other or something. You know what I mean? And
A-
so, but anyways, yeah, you're right. That was the story. Like that is how I got sparked off, and that kind of like is what initiated what I eventually ended up uh, really committing to, the
And
craft
then
of it.
so the craft of it, that journey started in 2008 when you started going
Mm-hmm.
into the dark room. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
And
Mm-hmm.
then so I'm assuming you were using 35 millimeter, right? Like a 35
Yeah.
millimeter
Camera.
manual
Mm-hmm.
camera.
Yeah. Manual. Yep. Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Do you remember what camera that was, or what
Yeah.
series, or?
Total. Yeah. For sure. So you know, again, that kind of uh, uh, you know, curiosity and the interest that I always kind of precedes things that I get into. Well, like a lot of times it starts years and years before I even actually stop talking about it and be about it, kind of thing. And so my wife, um, in high school, either high school or she was in the Peace Corps. So either she got in high school, can't remember, or right before going into Peace Corps. But she had it's called Pentax K1000. And that camera I recognize because that's the camera that like Glenn Friedman would use, Lance Mountain, Neil Blender, Todd Swank, a lot of those guys that would shoot photos of each other on their tours, and then would be the article in the magazine. Like I recognize that camera, so when like that camera being on our mantle in the house always represented that craft to me. It always represented what those dudes could do, and I would always look at it and be like, one day, one day. I mean, I did that for like years and years. And so when I finally was like, okay, I'm gonna go for it, that is the camera I started with. So it's
Yep.
a Pentax K1000.
And that sort of like one day mindset, like what, how do I say it? Like, because you seem so much of like an instinctual person that, like you said, you're a sponge. And like, what do you think was the hesitation for you not to immediately purchase that once you noticed that, all your friends essentially had that camera and you wanted to
Because
pursue?
I mean, it's the same thing with skateboarding and music, where it's like, you know, I'm I'm what I call mono-minded. It's just like if I'm working on one thing, I just gotta concentrate and work on one thing. Like I can't multitask my interests. So like, like working on my book, it was just like, okay, I'm gonna dedicate 3 months because, well, I had a deadline, right? So I'm just like, boom. But when I'm in something, I got to be in that. Like it's hard for me to shift gears and like be somewhere else. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah, it makes
so
sense.
understanding that about myself, like I knew like the one day is like when I can actually concentrate on it because I'm like doing a lot of music right now and skating. So I was just like, and have a family, started a family with two young kids. And so a lot of it's just kind of getting older and having to be practical because I've got responsibilities now. But even when I didn't
Yeah.
have responsibilities, I was still like skateboard. I mean, music would take a back seat to skateboarding for the longest. It took a while before I figured out how to like work that in and stuff.
Yeah. No,
So I think that's a part of my makeup too. Is just like, and friends would make fun of me too for it, but it's just like, yeah, like if I'm working on like music all day, it's hard for me to break away and be like, okay, let's go skate. Like it's or go film. I can go hop my board and just be, but I can't be like I'm working on music and now I got to go film a trick. I can't. I just got to be like either one.
yeah, I know. I get you. I get you. Yeah. Um, like essentially, like maybe in a day, you like to focus on like one or two like major things, major sort of like disciplines, like skateboarding or music, or like in a long time period, like a long stretch, right?
Yeah, well, and what I'm saying has more to do with projects. If I'm working on a project,
I
like
see.
I
I
can
see.
sit,
That makes sense.
does that make sense? Like I could sit down and like noodle around and come up with a song melody or something, and then go skate, and then after skating, have my camera and go shoot. But if I'm like working on a like I'm like I got to get this done and I need to concentrate. Like my mind's got to stay in that process.
Makes sense.
I can't go from one project to the next in the same kind of window. It's got to be
Yeah.
like I got to shift
Yeah.
gears, and sometimes the gear shifts with another day
I
because
get
I'll
that.
get kind of fried out. I don't know, it's weird, but again, going back to like why I was saying one day, it's because of that. It's like because I know like the craft. It's out of respect for the craft.
I
It's
get
like
it.
to get good
Yeah.
at anything, like you got to work hard, right? And so I'm having to acknowledge like how hard can I work at this right now, actually.
Mhm.
And then when it got to that point where it's just like I got to a point though where I was just like I got to figure it out. I just got to go for it.
Makes sense.
And
So
then mhm.
speaking of projects, w- I guess what was the gestation or the beginning point of the idea for your book, the joys in capturing the journey? Like, what started that? Like you wanting to
Mm.
create this book? Let's go with that. Yeah, what started that?
Well, yeah. I mean, as a photographer, like much like a band, right? Like a band wants to release an album. Like that's a fun part. Or a skateboarder would love to have their name on a board, or you know what I mean. And so, as a photographer, like it's just another way to express your work, but you express it in a package that can tell a. It's like a movie as opposed to like I don't know a commercial or something. Like your images, your single images is like just a small little thing, but a book you can tell a narrative, you can tell a story, right? And so, um, one thing that like I've always learned, and it's a huge part of my approach to things is, and and I've learned from like just people that have just influenced me and inspired me because of their craft and everything is like how important presentation is. Presentation is kind of everything. You know what I mean? Because in your presentation, like you kind of show like the how much you care about the thing itself. You know what I mean? And so,
Mhm.
at least in my mind, I've always felt that. And so again, I got into photography partly because I want to document the blessings of this life that I've truly believe has been God's grace in my life to allow me to have these experiences and to do these things.
Yeah.
Um, so I wanted to document that, but a huge part is I wanted to go in the dark room and make beautiful prints. You know what I mean? It's no different than
Yeah,
right? Like what filmmaker doesn't want like their film edited right, and like that's a part of what you're doing. It's a part of what you're trying to communicate, right? Because I've always felt that unless you're unless you're doing stuff in your room excluded from others, then you're kind of responsible for communicating whatever you're putting out there for other people to see.
definitely.
You know what I mean? And so for me it's like you want to communicate as best as possible what you're trying to say with what you're doing, right? And like presentation is a huge part of that, right? And so anyways, like I've always felt like that is how you present your work. That is such a beautiful way to present your work, is in a book.
No,
Like, and
I
you know, all my heroes, all of, you know what I'm saying?
mhm.
Um and so the I was so grateful to have the opportunity, and there was always something in the back of my mind towards what I was doing, is like, one day I want to do a book, one day I want to do a book. And so
Yeah,
um early on, the first year of getting in the dark room and like really getting wrap my head around the, you know, what I'm doing, I had an idea of like, man, it'd be so fun to do a book called 1 Year with One Camera and One Lens. And you're
mm.
just kind of like showing like this is the enthusiasm and what came from the enthusiasm of like 1 year going for it, committing to like just one camera, one lens, and just, you know, and then that turned into 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and then turned into like 10 years. And then thankfully, what I'm so grateful for, and that's what I was saying earlier about how skateboarding brings things that are so far away near. Well, the popularity of skateboarding and the community and the culture and the demographic, it makes a lot of these brands outside of skateboarding want to be involved with skateboarding, because they want to speak to that market. They want to speak to that demographic. And so I'm very grateful that like companies that are make some of my favorite tools, if you will, products like Fender guitars and Leica cameras, like when they look into the skateboard space, I'm very grateful that my name gets brought up, you know? And so I've had the fortunate opportunities to work with brands that I genuinely like love, because they're a huge part of my what I do, because they're the paintbrushes that I use, if you will. They're my
Yeah,
favorite brushes, you know what I mean? And so I guess, you know, 2014, Leica Cameras reached out to me because they were just doing a whole new like renovation of their headquarters in Wetzlar, Germany. They like built a new museum, they built a hotel. They wanted it to be like camera nerds, Leica nerds in particular, Disneyland. You come and stay at the hotel, go on the tours of the factory, see how things are made, go to the museum, all in one space, right? And so for the grand opening of that, they wanted to have an exhibition of musicians that are Leica photographers that use Leica cameras, right? And so they asked me to come play for one of the nights, but they were like, "We want you to hang your prints." And that experience, well, first off, I was like, I'll come play it, but I'm not gonna hang my photos. Like that's like Carnegie Hall, you know what I mean? And I'm a busker at like a Subway, like you know what I mean? Like so so I was just kind of like, yeah, I'll come play music, but I'm not gonna hang my, because all my heroes, like, you know, all the greats like that really inspired me, that so many of them were like war photographers or photojournalists, you know, a lot of them from the Magnum um, group collective of photographers. I was just like, what? Like, but they were just like, no, like we want you to hang your work. We like it. And then my buddy Thomas Campbell encouraged me. He's just like, Ray, stop tripping. Like, just, you know, put the prints together and hang the work. And so they wanted like at least 15 images, but I printed up 20 and gave it and, you know, show them. And they were like, cool, you can print all of them, you know? And going through that process, that was like 10 years after I started. I called that 10 years with one camera and one lens. Cause I figured like, cause I always feel like when I enter into spaces like that, whether it's music or photography, like I'm representing skateboarding, you know, like I grew up with like, you know, seeing like actors being bands and things like that. And you're like, and you're just like, if they weren't an actor, they wouldn't be there. You know what I mean? Like they wouldn't be on David Letterman marketing this. It doesn't like, like
Yeah.
I felt like I could tell people who got opportunities because of something else they did. And don't get me wrong, like that's me too. But I always wanted to represent skateboarding in a way of like I always have been encouraged when people are like, I like your music or I like your photos. I didn't even know you skated. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah, yeah. I get that.
so for me, like I wanted to represent skateboarding in that space. You know what I mean? And the craft of like, you know, because I knew a lot of the other images, which that's cool, but they were going to be inkjet and digital, um, and not to say that there's not craft in that, but I wanted to represent well the craft that I'm excited about and that my skate buddies got me excited about, that they came from, and all my heroes outside of skate come from. I wanted to represent that kind of process of like you shoot it and then you print it yourself and then you hang the prints, you know what I mean? And so that process right there started to formulate what the joy is in capturing the journey turned into, because it was the first time at that point I had about like 100 rolls already processed, probably 200 rolls not processed. I processed 100 rolls out of that 200, so I had 200 rolls. And I say rolls, each roll is 36 exposures. I had proof sheets upon proof sheets of just looking at, and like that process taught me how to start editing. But it was the first time I looked into like what I've been up to for 10 years. I'm like,
That's awesome.
I'm looking at it and I'm like, whoa, like you see themes, you see stuff. And that's where I realized that like, because I had to figure out like, what's the narrative for the show? Like, what is the work? Like, what is it? And it was like, oh, the narrative is me, my life. Like all these different kind of like, you know, basically themes, topics, you know what I mean? That comprise it's, and so it's like, I, I learned what the work is through that process. And so the book is just 6 more years of the same kind of process, you know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
that's where it came from. It's just, or that's where it got developed.
That's
And so
amazing.
instead of saying 16 years with one camera, one lens.
No, I love that. No, that's cool, man. I mean, you definitely, from what I'm hearing from you, you seem like a very intuitive, curious individual. And I guess my question is what do you think keeps you that way?
I mean, it goes back to what I've been saying. It's like, it's baked in. I don't know how to say it. It's my character, makeup. I mean, I'm just saying it's received, not
Yeah.
achieved, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? It's like I'm just functioning in it. I can't help it. I mean, it works against me. At times it's not good.
Yeah. Well,
You know what I mean?
yeah, every strength can be a weakness. Every weakness can be, or a weakness can be a strength too. You
Yeah,
know.
and that's what I was trying to say earlier. Like, it's not something I work at. It's just, um, it's just Oh, I'm sorry. I remember what I was saying too. What I was trying to get at. I don't even know. Like, it just is what it is. Like, I guess we could say it's a strength, but like sometimes I feel like to say it's a strength means that the opposite is not. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing wrong with someone that's just like, I'm not interested in much. I just am responsible and I just handle my biz and I'm cool. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that's cool too. Like, that's no
Yeah.
different. That's not weaker than like the dude that's just like got to be doing a bunch of stuff. It's just like, so I don't know. You know what
Well,
I
I
mean?
think,
I'm very grateful because I'm having fun and things are like, you know what I mean? But I guess what I'm saying is like, I don't think it's like, but I'm grateful for the person that has the complete opposite and it's just like, I don't need to do all that stuff. I'm cool. All I need to do is like do what I do and then like I'm good. And that's like awesome, man. The most important thing is at the end of the day, it's like peace. And where's that peace coming from? You know what I mean? And for me, my peace comes from Jesus. And so that's that's everything else is just kind of, I'm just trying to be a good steward with functioning in what I have, basically.
yeah. No, I like that. I like that. Yeah. I mean, I guess just for the sake, like the sake of like getting interviewed for a podcast, it's like we're, like kind of creating a sort of logical structure and in a way to view all this stuff, but sometimes I think it can be very simple, you know. Maybe I can just state really quick that the internet went down, your internet
Yeah,
went
yeah,
down,
yeah,
and so I'll ask a question. Um, do you have anything else that you like to say, or anything that you like to tell the audience? Any advice or anything like that, and then you could just say it from there if you like.
yeah. I mean, first of all, like, yeah, man, like, thanks for having me on, and
Of
uh,
course.
it was yeah, it was fun. It was fun to chat with you, and if people are still listening to this point, um, yeah, man, just I guess just sniff out your curiosity, like if if there's anything that you're curious about or interested in, then I encourage you to just take the next step to explore experiencing it to see if it might turn into something more, you know. But um, I think that interests are important because they're a way to connect you with community. Um,
Definitely.
if you know, and and possibly something that could turn into something that you couldn't imagine because that's uh, that's been my experience.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, that's kind of it. And uh, yeah, thanks again
Of course,
for
man.
having me.
Of course, man. Yeah, thanks so much for doing this and coming on, man. Um, well, cool. I guess I could just cut it from there. But
Yeah,
no,
hopefully you can salvage something with.
no, it's don't even trip, man. It's all good, man. I mean, because a majority of the conversation, the audio is really good, and it just I'll
So
say that at the end.
yeah,
I'm not precious
yeah, yeah,
about
yeah.
it. You know what I'm saying? So
Cool. Yeah, and
yeah,
it could play into the rawness of it cutting out.
yeah. No, it's all good, man. Like I've learned to not be precious about things and just like allow things
Right
to
on.
occur as they do. You know what I'm saying? So it's all good, man. But
Yeah,
I appreciate you for
yeah,
like taking the time too, and for Jacob for connecting us, and
yeah.
um,
Super cool. So
yeah,
I can't remember. Are you living out there?
yeah. I'm trying to move out here actually. So I'm actually coming back to
That's right.
California in August. I'm gonna make my
And
way
will you be
down
in
to.
NorCal?
I will, but I'm also going to be in SoCal. So, yeah,
Yeah,
maybe me,
man.
you,
Hit
and
me up.
Jacob can grab like a lunch or something.
Yeah, that'd be super cool.
Cool, sweet man.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, well, right on, man. Yeah, and then when you get it happening, I'll post it or something.
Okay, yeah, sounds good, man.
Where people can check it out.
Definitely, man. Yeah.
Dude, you know what? I want to go back and see the one with Jerry.
Oh, yeah. You want me to send you a link to that?
Yeah, send me a link to that. Yeah, that'd be cool.
Okay. Yeah, I'll send that to you. All right, man.
Right on. All right, have a good one.
All right, buddy. Take care.
Okay, see ya.
Bye bye.